Hello folks, let's dive into this little bad boy. The Beach Boys, I believe 22nd studio album, anyway, somewhere around there, released in 78. The Beach Boys M.I.U. album, Maharishi International University album. I have no clue why this is called M.I.U. album. I know it was mostly recorded there, but why it is the title of this album, I have no freaking clue. But anyway, this is gonna be a fun one. 76, Brian came back. They did 15 big ones, Brian leading the project. They did also a follow-up album, Beach Boys Love You. Once again, Brian leading that project. And Brian was really on a creative role around that time period. He was writing a ton of songs and super creative, interesting stuff. And he was also writing the lyrics, which was a new thing kind of for him. Like, he was mostly writing the whole song by himself. So anyway, so it was just a new thing for him. He was using different new kinds of instruments, mostly synthesizer based, and doing interesting stuff, new kinds of stuff. So he continued that sort of Love You path and that creative role with the material that was going to be an album called Little Tomboy, and it was going to be released originally instead of this one in 78 or late 77. I believe probably 78 was going to be the release year of that one. But anyway, Mike and Al did not like that material at all, so they vetoed that. They didn't want that put out. There's different stories. Sometimes it's said that the record company rejected that. I don't know what the real reason is, but some of that material has then later been released on different compilations. In my opinion, Adult Child is far just so much better, superior album than this one, and it is such a sadness that it wasn't released and instead we got this one. But this is not a video about Adult Child, so yeah. But hopefully there's gonna be, I don't know, but hopefully there's gonna be an official release of that album at some point with the next few years or so, but we can only hope. So anyway, Adult Child didn't happen, but this happened. Why? Well, 78 and 77, the whole period for the group was just crazy. They were in such a big turmoil. First of all, they were a big concert ticket seller, so they were making much more money than they had ever done before with their concerts. And Dennis also was such a creative guy during this time period. In 77, he released his first and only solo album, Pacific Ocean Blue, and that's a great album. That's a masterpiece if you ask me. I'm gonna do a review of that one at some point, but anyway, and that whole thing caused a lot of conflict within the group, especially with Al Jardine and Mike Love sort of teaming up against the Wilsons, especially Dennis. But yeah, like, things got so bad that they had to travel with different airplanes. And 78, they did an infamous Australian tour. I'm not sure, it probably might have even been after the release of this one. I'm not really sure of that timeline right now. But anyway, where basically, like, the Wilsons were doing drugs and they got into fighting, and Carl was just awful on stage, and it's really sad. But Dennis was actually the guy that was sort of holding things together, and well, it was just crazy. And Brian was in a bad spot because his marriage was falling to pieces. He was still married to Marilyn, but things were not doing good. He was having an affair with Marilyn's sister Diane, and also he had this third woman, Debbie, who he was seeing too simultaneously, and he was also getting back to drugs and very hard stuff, and mentally, not doing so well. But he was in a creative role still, like I mentioned. He was writing a lot of songs, and he was enjoying performing with the Beach Boys and that touring aspect. And he was still in a relatively good shape too in this era. And so anyway, just a lot of crazy stuff. If you want to dive into that, read some books or whatever, you know, about that era, it's super fascinating. Anyway, it was Mike's and Al's idea to fly the group to Iowa, where this new it was, I think it was established in '74, so it was pretty much a new university by Maharishi, and it's part of the transcendental meditation thing. I've talked about it previously, so I'm not gonna really dive into that here. But anyway, like, to fly the group there and record the new album, they worked on Christmas songs and the songs on this one. For a long time, the story went so that they first did the Christmas album and then the record label rejected it, and then they re-recorded a bunch of those tunes with different lyrics and then made this album instead. But lately it's been corrected that they actually worked on both of those albums simultaneously. The Christmas album didn't end up happening, even though there are actually some really cool tunes from those sessions, especially Winter Symphony and Christmas Morning by Dennis, and so on, a few other great tunes as well, which I really love. But M.I.U. ended up happening, and this album is just a cluster mess. It's got some nice tunes, it's got a few great tunes, and then it's got like, I don't know, like 6 to 8 tunes that vary from mediocre to awful. So the thing is, personally, if I'd done this review, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, I would have been much more positive about this, because when I heard this the first time, I actually enjoyed it quite a lot. And I didn't even find Hey Little Tomboy problematic in any way, because I didn't even know what tomboy was. Because, you know, English is not my native language, so I just thought it was kind of a, you know, okay tune. So anyway, well, you know, I dug this actually for many years, but the thing is, the more I listen to the material, the more I just get tired of it, you know, and find it not so good. So I don't think it really holds up to repeated listens that much. There's this resurgence of M.I.U. being like for the past few years, and I feel that there's a lot of people who actually like to really put down 15 Big Ones, and those same people really love this one. And I don't know what went wrong with those people. but they, in my opinion, they're kind of crazy. Okay, so I'm kidding. Everybody's got their opinion, but come on. 15 Big Ones has that amazing Brian, you know, magic in those original songs, at least most of them. And the production is really good and interesting, quirky. And, you know, there's just, and the covers are, you know, good tunes, good compositions, and they are decent versions at least, and some of them are actually great. So, you know, in my opinion, 15 Big Ones is so much better than this one. Basically, what came before this and after this is so much greater. Well, the thing with this one, it's kind of, it tries to be yacht rock, but it fails so badly. But let's just dive in. I think that's enough of the backstory and all that wishy-washy ramble. So let's just dive into the tracks. Well, first a few words about the album cover. I hate the album cover. I think it's probably the worst album cover that they ever had. The title of the album is horrible, and I cannot really imagine anybody seeing this in a record store in '78 and thinking like, hey, I want to get that. No, it looks horrible. Back cover is so lazy. They even reused basically the same, it's not the same frame, but basically the same frame from the Love You back cover, and nobody wants to see Al shirtless. Some people might want to see Brian shirtless, but, you know, I'd say like 9 people out of 10 don't want to see Al shirtless. So anyway, like, what? Why did they use this photo? I don't know. I have no clue. Well, actually, there's one cool thing about this artwork, and it is the inner sleeve, which is actually super cool in my opinion, because it's got the lyrics, it's really classy, and it's got also really good notes over here. I think it's like the second time after 15 big ones. Then actually they are actually crediting the musicians, and you can see that it's basically just the Beach Boys with a few studio musicians, including Gary Griffin for the first time, who played with Brian for a long time. Great guy. And also you got Ed Carter, obviously, and Billy Hinchy, and Ron Altbach too, who co-produced this album and also co-wrote a few songs. But it's mostly just the Beach Boys, which is really cool. And it also credits lead vocals, and it's really interesting to see that music coordinator of this album has been Diane Rowell, out of all people. So, I can only imagine all that drama behind the scenes. So, anyway, just a really classy inner sleeve. This is really something that I do adore. And all of the following that I'm gonna say about the following tracks of this album is coming from a person who actually has a copy of two copies of M.I.U. and a copy with Al Jardine's signature. So I do like the album as a separate thing, but I think it just represents just such a sad, uninspired period of their story. And also, you cannot stop thinking about what could have been if Adult Child was released, or if Dennis would have actually had a voice in the group, because the stuff that he was recording around this time period, working on his follow-up, or to be, his follow-up album for Pacific Ocean Blue, Bamboo, the material is phenomenal. So after the release of this one, actually, Dennis said that, I cannot now remember the quote exactly, but he basically said that that's an embarrassment to my life, and I hope that meditation will fuck up my class meditation forever. And I can completely see where he's coming from. I know he's being pretty harsh over here on that statement, but I can completely see where he's coming from. If you compare the material over here to, the material he was working on, it's really sad, because his stuff is current, it's commercial, it's cool, it's soulful, it's produced super well, and it's written really well. It's introspective, self-reflective, what's that word? It's everything, and this is it just pales in comparison, and it's really sad. And I don't think any of the material, pretty much none of these songs were played live at any point, really, at least not after the release of this one. And I think probably a lot of that has to do with the fact that Dennis and Carl probably just, didn't want to perform any of this material live. Now, I can't really blame them. I can't blame them. And in the 90s, Brian reflected in some interview that he has actually no memories of recording this album at all. So, I can't blame really him either. But, okay, let's dive into the tracks. So, the album starts off with She's Got Rhythm, which is actually a really stellar opening track. I love this tune, and this is one of the few tunes that actually work pretty fine with the production style of this album. Though, I have to mention that I cannot help but to imagine this song performed in actually with a good production, and how killer that would be. Because the thing with the production on this album, Al produced it with Ron Altbach. I know Brian gets a sort of co-producer credit, but it's been stated that it's mostly just sort of done to please the record company, so to speak. So, Brian didn't really have a hand in the production, and if you listen to the album, it's pretty clear, because it sounds nothing like a Brian Wilson production. So, anyway, She's Got Rhythm, great vocals by Brian, and Brian sings so beautifully, so well. I think he's by far the best vocalist on this whole album. He's very prominent, because he actually was very prominently on the sessions. He's co-writing, I think, most of the tunes, and he's singing on pretty much each track. Dennis is only on one song, My Diane, doing lead vocals, and then I think he might be playing drums on She's Got Rhythm. I'm not really sure, but anyway, he's basically out of the whole thing. He didn't come to M.I.U. and he was just out. He didn't want to participate, and really can't blame him. And then Carl is only doing lead vocals on one song, and then backgrounds on, I don't know, 1 or 2 songs. I guess 2 other songs, maybe 3, I don't know. So, but anyway, like he's absent too. So Brian was really the only Wilson to collaborate, and basically it's just Mike and Al's project. And I think that's really sad too, because as much as I love and appreciate, Mike and Al, I'm not a Mike hater by no means, but this kind of just shows you where the sort of the true talent of the Beach Boys was. Because if you compare what the Wilsons were doing musically in this time period, and you compare what Mike and Al cooked up with this one, it's like night and day, really. But anyway, as much as I love Al and Mike, I'm sorry, I have to be honest. Anyway, She's Got Rhythm, I love the lyrics, I love vocals. Mike sounds really good on that one too, and Brian's falsetto is super cool. And I think this could have been a hit with a different production style, because even though I mentioned it actually works okay with this style of this album, and I guess I got sort of sidetracked. The style of this album, it's kind of like yacht rock, but not really. It's more like elevator music. It's very uninspired. The drums sound very lame, and the songs that should be produced like a rock song, that were written like a rock song, they don't rock at all. They sound very lame, and it's just filled with these instrumental licks and parts that are just really boring, and it just sounds, I don't know, like boring is a great word to describe it, because it's not offensive, excluding a few lyrical contributions, but it's not like offensively bad, and it is like concerns the whole album, but it's just so lame. And that's really the biggest issue with this album for me personally, because the songwriting and the composition, especially the ones that Brian had a hand in writing, are pretty good, but just the production drags it down so much. Anyway, let's continue. The second track is Come Go With Me, which is a 50s song covered here by Al, and it's an okay tune. It was a minor hit in the early 80s. Released it as a single to promote the 10 Years of Harmony set, I believe. Was it 81? Yeah, it's an okay tune, and it's an okay cover, but nothing super special. The third track is Hey Little Tomboy, which, originates, I believe, from 76, so it's an earlier Brian Wilson tune. Brian wrote the lyrics too, and it's kind of offensive lyrically. Musically, it's it's not bad, but the thing with this one, it's kind of like Johnny Carson in a way, because it's not a rock song, it's not a ballad, it's kind of a novelty song, but it's not funny in a sort of good way, so, and that whole part, it sounds funny if I mimic it, hey little tomboy, it's like, it might sound funny, but it's actually just not funny. The production is just really bland once again. And I'm a guy that mostly doesn't really care about the lyrics. Like, if the lyrics are kind of bad, I don't mind, but this one just doesn't do much for me. Even a Carl can't save it. And fourth track of side 1 is Kona Coast, and that one is kind of the same thing. It's just a really sad, probably the saddest song, and not in a traditional Beach Boys way, but just in a way that it's kind of really bad. I know this song has its fans, and I used to like it too previously, but to me it's so sad that they try to mimic the sort of the surf thing with this one, even bringing back a melody line and lyrics from the great song Hawaii from Surfer Girl 63. So, and even putting Brian to sing that part, basically just ripping off that great classic. And not, by the way, not including Brian as a songwriter. What is that about? Dr. Love, I don't know, it's weird. And Brian probably just didn't care, and nobody probably ever made a single cent with this track. But it's just, to me, what it represents to me is just so sad, because they are so hard trying to sort of mimic that success and that style, but this song just with the production and the mics singing that style, that nasal style, it doesn't work at all. It sounds like a really sad self-parody to me. It's then followed with Peggy Sue, which I would like to know if this was recorded previously, because it's one of the better productions on the whole album, and I actually like it more than Come Go With Me, because I think it's a better composition, and this one rocks more too. It's got great bass guitar and good drum sound, and overall just a solid lead vocal. I believe this to be one of the more underrated tracks of the album. Wontcha Come Out Tonight and ends side 1, and I love this tune. This one is a favorite of mine. First of all, it's a Brian and Mike co-wrote, which is great, always to have that combo. And Brian sounds amazing on it. He sounds so soft, and I love that singing style that he found for this album. Mike sounds pretty good too. The background vocals are kind of, I don't know, like that sound. That I think the problem might be with that I have with the background vocals is that I think it's mostly just Mike and Al, and it just sounds they both are kind of singing in a weird way, so it just doesn't. I think Brian might be there too, but because it's lacking Dennis and Carl, it just sounds weird. It doesn't sound like, I don't know, they just really couldn't pull off that style with the, like, later, like in the 2000s, after Dennis and Carl had passed, I think they found a way with that's why I got by the radio with bringing in Jeff and other singers, and Brian and Al and Mike all kind of just found a more natural way of singing. I don't know, a better sound for their voices. I don't know, and including Bruce too, because Bruce isn't here either, so it sounds a lot better, even though Dennis and Carl are missing too from the later recordings, the more recent stuff. Over here it just sounds really weird with them missing. I don't know. But yeah, Wontcha Come Out Tonight, I think it's a cool composition, overlooked song. I think it's not too deep, but it's got a really nice melody. And yeah, I really love this track. I think it's one of the best tracks of the album. Underrated gem, dare I say. Side 2 then starts off with Sweet Sunday Kinda Love, and it's a great moment to flip the record and hear Carl's lead singing, because it's like, oh, finally music, like great stuff. Like, just to hear his voice is like, oh, it's just so great compared to some of the tracks on side 1. But yeah, I love the tune, even though it's a kind of mundane, not one of Brian's better compositions, but it's very solid nonetheless. There's really not much else to say about it. It's then followed with Bells of Paris, which for a lot of people is like the worst track that the Beach Boys ever recorded. I don't feel that way. Even though Mike's French thing doesn't really do much for me, I don't mind it. I actually kind of enjoy the song. I think the chorus is really nice. Brian sings it really nice. And the composition is pretty cool too. The melody is quite beautiful. And I think it's one of those tracks on the album that kind of, like, the production style kind of fits it, because it's a sort of saccharine song anyway, so that sort of jingle jangle style, I think it kind of fits the song, but it's not a too deep song, and I would probably like it more with different lyrics. And I think it originally was like Bells of Christmas or something, but I'm not too familiar with that version. Bells of Paris is then followed with My Diane, which is easily, by far, the greatest song of this album. And I think the whole track, pretty much, backing track and lead vocals, they all come from different sessions than the M.I.U. Sessions. I believe they are, like, whether earlier sessions or after. I don't know what was like the deal with that. I don't remember the dates right now. But anyway, Dennis sings the lead vocal. The song is about Diane Rovell. It's very heartbreaking, gut-wrenching, soulful lead performance. Brian sings a lead part 2, and it's very similar to the side 2 material of Love You. production is light years ahead of the other tracks, so it just doesn't belong on this album. It sounds much more like an adult child track, and to me it's kind of sad. While it makes this whole album, really, without that track this album really, I don't know, it just wouldn't be much, because it's so much better than anything else on the album. Well, excluding, I don't know, one or two other tracks, but yeah, like, simultaneously I think it's kind of sad that it is here, because it's just so much better and it just doesn't really have, I don't know, a place here. And it's kind of really dumb that it's just thrown at the center of side 2, because it's so hidden and not many people know this track, and I think this should be a classic, really, like a well-known classic, but it isn't, which is really sad, because it's just hidden at the center of side 2 of a very bland album. Then we are almost at the end. We only have 2 more tracks, and the second to last track is Matchpoint of Our Love, which is another highlight of the album. Brian Wilson, lead vocal, composition, and Mike helped with the lyrics, though in my opinion it sounds very much like Brian lyrics, so I don't know what actually Mike wrote. I would love to know more if he actually did write the whole set of lyrics or if he just helped with parts, but to me it sounds mostly the style of lyrics that Brian would write, kind of interesting, quirky lyrics with tennis references, and a lot of people hate the lyrics, but in my opinion they are very cool. I actually don't mind the tennis references, and I think the sort of the relationship and the emotional, stuff in the lyrics are really cool and touching. So I always actually like the lyrics a lot, and the composition is super cool, really beautiful. Brian's lead vocals over here are some of my favorite vocals by Brian, like, no matter the era, just great freaking performance on this song. He sounds so soft and soulful, and the thing with this track is, once again, I think it would be better with a different production, but I think it's probably with She's Got Rhythm the only track that really, not maybe benefit is maybe a wrong word, but just, handles that sort of uninspired production the most well, I guess. Like, that bland production doesn't really hurt it that much, I should say, maybe, I don't know. It's got this sort of soft disco vibe, which is alright with this track, but it's got cool guitar work, and the tag is really beautiful, and overall I really love this tune. And once again, just really sad that it's at the end of side 2 of a really bland album, so nobody really knows the tune. Anyway, the album ends off then with Winds of Change, which is a Ron Altbach, Al Jardine co-wrote, I believe. I think it's actually Ron Altbach and Ed Tuleha. So no Al. Okay, sorry. This one I don't care about at all. I've tried it many times, and That Won't Last Forever bit that Brian sings is beautiful, but that's really it. I cannot really get into this song at all. I've tried it with many different ways. I've tried to listen to it separately. I've listened to it multiple times with the album. I've read the lyrics, just the lyrics, not listening to the music, and I think the lyrics are horrid. Like, I have no idea what the lyrics are about. I think they're something that sort of like a 15-year-old could write. Like, I just don't like the lyrics at all, and the melody is so boring, and the production style, it tries so hard to be so emotional and so grandiose, and it's like, nah, I just can't feel it. Like, it tries to be soulful in a dishonest way, in my opinion. I just don't get it. I know this track has its fans, and it's alright. If you like the song, I'm happy for you, but I cannot really get into it. Never could. It might actually be like the bottom of my barrel if I'd, list my least favorite Beach Boys songs. I don't know, maybe. just don't care for it. So anyway, that's the album, and yeah, sorry Al, you're just not a good producer. I'm really sorry. And Ron Altbach, he had his merits, and he was a really great instrumentalist, but like as a songwriter, not so impressed with his work. And you know, he passed away a few years back, and I realized he was a very important part of this era of the group, and he was a good musician and probably a really cool guy. So I'm really sorry about that. But I would love to give more praise to the work by him and Al on this album if I could, but I have to be honest to myself, don't like it. I think this might be my least favorite Beach Boys album of all time. So, you know, there you go. What do you think about the album? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let's continue in the comment section. If I forgot something, I probably did. You know, let's talk over there and continue over there. And hopefully see you soon again on the next album review, which is going to be LA. So keep waiting for that. I know I will be. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you soon, hopefully again. Take care. Bye bye.